Good evening, everybody. I don't know if anybody's online yet, but welcome to the Victory Speaks show. It is Wednesday, April the 7th, and we are in springtime. How is everyone doing? We are listening to the beautiful songs of Calabash. If you haven't gotten the CD yet, you should. I don't own the rights to the music, but I do have the wonderful ability and permission to play the music um, with the gracious permission of Anthony Pierre and Darren Shepherd, uh, who's on pan, the steel pan, playing this piece here. Great album. It brings me lots of joy. So hope you're going to get a little comfy. You know, it's been a nice day outside. Hopefully you're back inside now because you know I'm on. So you know you have to rush home, rush to your computers. Is everybody at their computers? Grab your notepads because tonight is going to be a different show, people. Different show. Now, remember to share with your friends, with your loved ones. Get ready to engage with us. This is going to be a conversation. And you never know when the wisdom's going to drop. I always tell you. So, welcome everyone to the Victory Speak Show. It's an inspired conversation series, and where iron sharpens iron. That's you and me sharpening each other. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Nicole Waldron, your voice of victory and your mental fitness coach. And I'm on a mission to inspire you to live a life of victory, a victorious lifestyle. You know, we need to cultivate that victorious mindset. And guess what? We have to mind our mind. And that's what we're talking about tonight. And we have many conversations in our lives. And I have had countless conversations with people doing wonderful work, and I want to share them with you in many industries. And so tonight, I'm presenting to you in Wednesdays, you know, on this wellness journey, minding our minds. It's the mental health series that we are starting that I've been cooking up behind the scenes. And I just want to welcome everybody as you're joining in, whether you're joining in. I see some from Trinidad and Tobago already jumping in here. Hi, Beverly. Welcome to the show. And for those of you who are running in, come on in, come on in, come on in, because I want you to not miss a moment. So, this new series tonight is called Minding Our Mind. It's, you know, our wellness journey is physical and mental. And we have to be intentional. We have to make these choices for ourselves, and we can't always do it alone. So, in this series, I want to focus on our wholeness, our mental health and well being, because in order for us to be really well with ourselves, you know, physically and mentally well, we have to take care of our mental health. So, my question tonight to you is, how are you minding your mind? I know I'm waiting for the answer. Eh? Like you can answer me. It's like a series here. And if you see me with a little low light, I just realized my lights just went out on me. So those for you on the replay or audio, you may not see that, but my light just went out, but we just got it back on. So how are you minding your mind? Think about it. What are you doing? What are your thoughts? How are you taking care of your mental health? Did you know that in any given year, 1 in 5 people in Canada will personally experience a mental health problem or illness? And today I want us to make that conscious choice. As I make it for myself, I encourage you to make it for yourselves, to make yourselves a priority. It's springtime, and what a better time to focus on this mental health. And guess what? We in Toronto, in Canada, we are on another lockdown. I don't know how it's going for you the rest of the world, but we have been put into more quarantine and restrictions for the next 28 days. And I know everybody's probably feeling, you know, a little anxious, a little upset, but we got to do this for our health. And so, as I reflect on spring, it's a new time in our lives. It's a time when life is coming back. Life is coming back into nature. The trees are getting green, the buds are blooming, the flowers and fruits are coming along. And what I love in the morning is that the birds are outside and they're chirping. Now, for those of you in warm countries, you get this all the time, but for us, we're not always getting that in Toronto. In springtime, nature is ready to show off what has been happening in the time of hiatus, what she's been working on in the winter season. For me, I find spring is truly an exciting time and where we are ready to just venture outside without those jackets, without that weight, and hear new sights and songs. Spring is a time of refreshing and new growth. It's also a time we do some spring cleaning. And you can think of today as the start of that, the spring cleaning in your mindset. So, as we enter into this special place that I've prepared for you today, I encourage you to even think of some affirmations for yourselves. These affirmations will become vision statements that you can use to help you frame the next steps as you work on your mental fitness. It will help you to be intentional. So, I'll start us off with some affirmations. And I wrote these recently as I was in a quiet space of meditation. And so here goes. Today, I'm going to do some spring cleaning for myself, for my mental and for physical health. Today, I'm preparing my mind to be and stay safe in a place of mental fitness. I will be anxious for nothing. Today, I'm going to operate from a centered position of peace and wellness. Today, I will be open to receiving the knowledge that is being presented to me so I can gain understanding and operate in wisdom. Today, I'm ready to show my body, my temple, new levels of love. And from this point forward, I will give the rest of my life and live the rest of my life in good physical, mental, and financial health. The exercises I do daily will renew my mind, body, soul, and spirit. Today, I will be renewed and refreshed, for I am now in a part of wellness, of my mental health, a wellness, and a revolution to get myself into a better place. So, joining me tonight to start this significant work in this particular area is an amazing woman that I have admired and watched for so long. She has been doing phenomenal work in Toronto, and I know her work is streaming and going to be international. Roxanne Francis is a registered social worker and psychotherapist who has been helping people access tools to change their lives for over 10 years. She is the owner of Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting Services, where she offers the following: video counseling psychotherapy for children, individuals, and couples, organizational mental health training to staff, organizational mental health training to management, organizational community training and education around anti Black racism, group supervision for social workers and psychotherapists, and group parenting education. She has a story because when you sit back and you listen to Roxanne's story, she didn't just, become a psychotherapist. This was not her first, rodeo. This wasn't the first profession that she chose. And so we are going to meet Roxanne tonight, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. So help me, give us some hearts, give us some love, as we welcome her to the Victory Speaks show. And Roxanne, come on in. I'm going to bring you in with a little music
All
up
right.
onto the stage. Woo! Yeah, a
Love
little
it.
jazz, a little set the mood. I know. I'm
Um,
so funny. I can get lost in the music of
in the
California.
music, yes.
In the music. Welcome, everybody. I see Sanaj online. Beverly is all the way in Trinidad. Serena's in the US. Sanaj is in Toronto. Welcome, 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 everybody. Share with your friends and loved ones because we are going to have a fabulous conversation. So, Roxanne, how are you doing? How's your day going?
I'm good. It's so good to be here. I've heard and witnessed wonderful things about this platform and have seen lots of different amazing people come through. So thank you for having me. Day was okay, busy doing some things. But this is actually the highlight of my day. So thank you for having me.
Hey! You're the highlight of my day too. I've been like, oh my God, what am I going to say to Roxanne? It's just so much, you know. So tell me, let's start. This show is called Victory Speaks, and I always like to ask people, what does victory look like to you in your life?
Wow. Coming to an understanding of exactly what it is that I want out of life, rather than having other people impose what they expect, but really coming to an understanding of what it is that I value and what it is that I want out of life. That's victory for me. And I think that a lot of people operate in this life where they don't understand what it is that they want, where they feel like they have to follow the plan that other people have set out for them, and they end up very, very being very miserable. So I think it's really, really important that we, a lot of people talk about what is their why, right?
Mm,
What is your big why? What is the,
yeah.
the, the thing that drives you? And it was when I began to understand that and started to operate from that, that everything shifted for me. And I think that's when I started to operate from a place of victory.
How did you figure out that you needed to even ask yourself, what is my why? And then how did you even figure out what is my why? That's a big one. That's good.
So maybe I'll start with maybe a little bit of a backstory. So I'm from Jamaica, and I came to this country a little bit over 20 years ago. And you know, I was kind of the person, you know, I guess the success story, right?
Yeah.
And I knew when my partner and I started our family, I knew that as every well-meaning parent,
Yes.
I knew that I wanted my children to have a better start, a brighter journey than I did, right? And
Yeah.
so when and you know, and again, we'll talk about that as well. But you know, I went through some challenges to bring them along on this way.
Yeah.
But when they were finally here, I knew that my goal was to spend as much time with them as possible, to ensure that they felt loved and secure in this world. I also knew that I grew up and went to primary or elementary school and high school, and started university in Jamaica, where all of my teachers and professors looked like me, but I knew that my boys would not have that here. And
Right.
so it was really important that I kind of formulated for them who they are in this world before the world tells them who they're expected to
Mm.
be. And so when I began to realize that the job that I was working in was demanding so much of me that it was robbing me my time with them,
Mm.
and my it just got to a point where it started to grind my mental health down, and I started to become really disturbed and upset within myself, and I could not figure out why. What is going on? I liked the work that I was doing. I liked the clients that I was working with, and I knew that I had a lot of guilt and sadness around not being present as much as I wanted to for these children, but I couldn't figure out what it was that was making me feel so um, so at unease within myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when I began to realize that it was because I couldn't be with my family the way I wanted to, and I realized that family was a huge boundary for me. And what was happening
Mm.
was that my I was trying to work my life around my job, when I wanted the inverse. I wanted my job to work around my family life.
That right there. That right there. That's gold.
Yeah, yeah. And then when I figured that out, I thought, oh, okay, well, what needs to happen in order for this? It's not like I didn't just get up one day and say, well, I'm going to quit. I had to figure out, okay, what are the steps? What needs to happen? What does this mean for me? I had to sit down with my partner and go, okay, so what does that mean? Am I going to stop working and become a stay-at-home mom? Am I going to, leave one 9 to 5 and go to another? What is going to happen here? And then um, it dawned on me that what I wanted to do was actually start my own practice. And I ended up actually what happened was I thought that the answer was to get into management. And
Okay.
uh, right, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what happened was a management position came up and I went for it. I went for it so hard. And it came down to myself and one other colleague. And the other colleague got it. And I was so mad. Right. But then I'm a faith believer. I'm a believer, right? So I thought,
Mm.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, God, I know that you don't make mistakes. So I'm just going to trust
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you had. And then about 2 months later, I ran into that person who got the job, and they were telling me that they were working around the clock. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
God, I dodged a bullet, right?
You did. You
So
did.
that,
And you didn't even know it. You didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it. And then I went to the director at my agency and said, okay, can I, can I flex my time? Can I take a leave of absence? Can I work part-time? I asked for so many options, and each time I offered an option, I was told, no, we don't do that here.
Wow.
And so as I was trying to figure out what to do, I said to my partner, I think I need to go into private practice, but I don't know the first thing. And he said, okay, well, let's start making some notes. And so I just started making notes and I started asking people that I knew, and then one day a friend of mine just said, my sister is starting a private practice in the next neighborhood over and she needs someone to work with children. And I started it part time, a little couple hours here, a little couple hours there. And then after a few months, I said, okay, that's it. And then I was able to do this and I worked with them for a while and now I'm kind of on my own, but I'm at a place now where I can breathe easy. I can
Right.
take a break in my day if I need to. And it really has helped my mental health just feel so much more settled.
And I love that you were intentional. And the other thing that people don't realize is inadvertent. You made an affirmation. You had a vision.
Hmm.
That's the big thing, having a vision for your life, but you had a vision for your family. And that's one of the things that I encourage myself even more now. And I wish I had done it when I was younger, but really having a vision plan for your family and
Hmm.
that became your why and has shaped the change, and you recognize that you had to make the change, and then look, everything was the steps started falling into place because
Oh, gosh.
once you write that vision and make it plain,
Yes.
that's when things start just happening for you. Now, I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit,
Yeah.
just to throw you off, just to throw you off for
Yeah.
a hot second. And everybody who's live on the replay, thank you for coming in. Dr. Vibe is saying hi. Serena said we've all been there. I thought it was a management and not. Yep, because you have to really make that decision. And when I think about what you're doing and knowing that you're a visionary,
Yeah.
all right, if you were prime minister,
Oh gosh.
what would be the issue you would tackle first off?
Oh, um, I would make therapy covered under the um,
Yes,
the health insurance plan
yes,
in every province in this country.
yes.
So
So
many
sweet.
people need to access therapy and they cannot afford it.
Yes, I am. Okay, Roxanne for prime minister. Roxanne for prime minister. That for me is absolutely a yes. And I would add to that, Madam Prime Minister, that employers need to increase how
Yes,
much the benefits are,
yes,
because there's $300, there's $500 that gives you one or two visits, and by the time
yeah,
it's
that's
done,
it.
makes absolutely no sense to me. And I also feel, Madam Prime Minister, that people are going to. She said she's interviewing. Yes, I am interviewing the Prime Minister. Yes, because I've just called it out. Is that families with a loved one with a mental illness, those
Yes.
caregivers need to go into counseling, should have therapy available right away, because we go through a whole different situation than just any regular illness. And I
Hmm.
know people with, and I say regular illness, but physical ailments, but people don't understand that you can end up with a mental illness taking care of a loved one with a mental
Hmm.
illness,
That's right.
and there's no therapy.
Yes.
Only your loved one has access to therapy or care or counseling. So I love that idea. How has the pandemic affected you?
Oh my gosh. I I talk to people a lot about boundaries, and that's something in terms of work life boundaries. That was something that I really had to, after a number of months, I couldn't, why do I feel like this? Was because I was working around the clock, because
Mm,
I was managing the home, I was managing children, managing my work, and it was just nonstop. And I just felt, I was exhausted all the time and almost had a little bit of brain fog because there was just so much going on.
yeah,
Um, you know, it really impacted me in that way. And then I was able to figure out how to put some boundaries in place, work between these hours, make sure my laptop is closed after a certain time. Um, put in my out of office on my email so that if you email me at a certain time, you know that you're not going to get a response until the following
That's a
day.
good one. That's a good one. I need
Yeah.
to do that. I need to do that. Okay, well, I'm writing that one down. Out of office on emails. Go ahead. I'm
Uh,
listening.
but I think more than anything else, I really um, I'm kind of a mix between an introvert and an extrovert. I have a girlfriend who says it's called an ambivert,
Yes,
right?
we are ambiverts. Yep.
Where I really enjoy connecting with people, but I do also need my time to myself to recharge. But I began to realize, as a result of this pandemic, that some of the big things that really hold us together mentally are those social connections,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I miss my friends, man. I miss a good lime. I miss hanging out.
Yes.
I miss hanging out. I miss hugs. I miss seeing people up front. I miss going to how she hustles events.
Yes.
I miss all those wonderful things, and I think that has really it impacts you.
Yeah.
Not having those people.
What other suggestions would you have for individuals listening live and on the replay about
Mhm.
boundaries? Because that's a big one.
Yeah.
Having to put those boundaries for yourself professionally and then personally, and especially when you may have families who are with their families all the time.
Hmm.
It's not like I mean, you can go for a walk and stuff, but you're really in that space more than you normally would be.
Yes. Yes. So in terms of people who are working from home, a friend of mine says, you didn't leave a 9 to 5 to now to work a 24/7, right? Because
That's good.
that's what people are doing, right? You left
Yeah.
your physical job where you started at a certain time. If you drove to work or you took the train or whatever it is, you would have that space between home and work to mentally prepare you for walking into the workplace. Then you would leave at 4, 5 o'clock, six
Yes.
o'clock, and then you would have that span of time between work and home to come down from work and get prepared for walking back through your front door. We don't have that anymore. And so it's this 24/7 cycle. So in terms of boundaries, um, I would say have some kind of ritual in the morning or in the evening that represents this is the end of my personal time and this is the beginning of my workday. So if that means, um, a cup of coffee or a shower and a nice
Yeah.
shirt and some lipstick or whatever that looks like. If you're going to do some stretches in the morning and then, put on some upbeat music as you're getting ready to start your day. So do something that signifies that the personal morning time is finished and my work time is started. And then at the end of the day, you want to bookend that again with something else.
Right.
So whether that's walking the dog or having a shower or changing your clothes or, you know, pouring yourself a glass of wine or whatever that is, whatever that looks like for you, it's really helpful to have something to mark the end of your day. And, I understand that you're working at home and it's easier to work late, but do your best to give yourself a hard stop. So if that means, okay, at 7 o'clock, no matter what, I'm shutting down,
Yes.
then do that. And the other thing that I would say is when you are working, ensure that the time that is carved out for work, that you're working so that when you're resting, you don't have to be working,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of being at home with people 24/7, you need a little bit of time to yourself, right? There are people who live alone, and that's one thing. There are people who live in multi-generational households,
Yes.
right? Where you're being pulled in every direction. Even if it means that you need to go in the bathroom, close the door, and sit on the floor for 10 minutes,
You do
just
it.
hear yourself breathe.
Yes. Yeah. You need a boundary bathroom break. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I like
You
that.
need
I love that.
a BB break. You will
I
write that
like
down.
that.
You
Write
need
that down.
a boundary bathroom break. Come on now. Because
But
it's so interesting. I love what you're saying here. Go ahead, Roxanne.
no, I just think it's helpful to have a moment to yourself. For people who work at home with their spouses or their partners, if it's possible in your living situation to have separate rooms where you work from, so that you're not constantly in each other's face, because absence make the heart grow fonder.
Come on. Come on. Let's bring it down.
There is really a high incidence of marital disputes and people separating in the
Yes.
midst of the pandemic, right? People are like, I've had enough of you. But one of the things that I will say is that this pandemic is like um, it's like a magnifying glass. It or like a flashlight. It highlights the things that were there before. It magnifies the things that were there before. So if you had a
I love
really
it.
strong relationship, then that's going to shine through in this pandemic.
Mm.
I know people who have great relationships and they go for walks with their partner in the lunch hour, or they take a coffee break together, or they might have a date night one evening when the kids gone to bed, whatever. But they're finding a way through this pandemic, right? But the
Mhm.
couples whose relationships were uh, fragile to begin with,
Mm.
this pandemic is shining a light on that, and they're not managing. It's This pandemic is like a stress test, and they're failing the stress test, and their relationship is falling apart because they're like, no, I don't want to be with you 24/7. I couldn't wait until you left for work before the pandemic, and now you're here all the time in my face. I can't take it, and it's coming out.
Well, this definitely, speaks to the fact of we definitely have to have a conversation just on relationships. I'm going to bring a panel together because I think that is such a big one. When you talk about the flashlight and the magnifying glass, that is a bing bing. Because it's like how people say, money doesn't change people, money reveals who people are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, welcome to those live and on the replay. Serena is right in here, loving the boundaries. I did that 2 weeks ago. Had a boundary bathroom break. A,
I love that.
a boundary bathroom break, and it felt great. Listened to music and had a peaceful moment.
Love
And
that, Serena.
a friend of mine told me what he does is he literally, when his day is just going just off kilter, he goes and reshowers.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
He takes a new shower. Now, for us women with hair and stuff, we may not want to
Yes,
do that.
yes,
But just put on a bathing cap. I don't care what you have to do, but sometimes it's just that refreshing. The water refreshes you. Or
yes.
change it. I like how you said, that, and I didn't even think about that, changing your clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, so like when I started, like if I have to have meetings and stuff, I'm dressing up. People are going to, no, I'm not going to meetings in sweats. I'm putting on the earrings. I'm putting on even if it's one meeting, I'm doing it because
Yes,
you have to present yourself just like if you were in person.
right.
And it does something for you when you sit differently and you act differently when you're just a little spruced up.
Yes.
However, I never thought about changing it at the end of the day.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
sometimes you just go straight into pajamas. But how about changing into your comfy clothes at the end of the day and
Right.
then doing the PJs at night? So I
Right.
like that idea. I really, really do. And so the pandemic is highlighting a lot of what their family life is really like.
Hmm.
And so when we think about the kids and and parents having to navigate their spaces, any tips for, you're ready with your spouse and then you add one or two and then you're homeschooling
Mm.
and staying sane in the midst of that, staying with a strong mental stability.
Hmm. For parents, I say, you know, we so often um, judge ourselves. We're always our worst critic, right? So we tell ourselves that we're not good parents, the
Yeah.
children are going to be messed up, you know, all this, right? I always tell parents, give yourself some grace, first of all. None of us we've never done this before. No one in recorded history has ever done this before. And we are figuring it out as we go. The government is figuring it out as they go. And so just know that what is that you're doing is you're doing the best that you can for your children. You're showing up in the best way possible. Your children are going to have reactions to this. They are going to act out. They are going to be nervous. They're going to have some anxiety. Your children didn't wake up to aggravate you. I promise you that.
Yes,
Children
that's
do
good.
well if they can. And, you know, give yourself the opportunity to mess up. If that's what happens, you can always go back in and try with the repair. You can apologize. You can take your child for a walk. They will love you, especially the smallest ones, right? Um, yeah,
Yes.
the teenagers, they might give you a little bit of, attitude, but
Hey.
and the other thing too, particularly for those with teenagers, as they pull away, it isn't necessarily because they are so mad at you. Teenagers
Hmm.
will pull away. That's what they do developmentally. It's their hormones preparing them for adulthood as they will eventually move on into their own lives. So as they're 15, 16, 17, 18, you find that they want to hang out more with their peers or their cousins when they used to only want to hang out with you. They're just
Yes.
growing up. It isn't about you. It isn't because you're a bad parent. It isn't because you're not cool anymore. Their friends are just more attractive to them. Um, when they don't want to talk to you, let them know that the door is always open
Mm.
if they ever want to talk. Um, for kids, adolescents and up, it's always good to, it's harder for them to talk to you face to face like this. It's easier for them to talk to you side by side. So going for a drive or going for a long walk or doing a puzzle together or doing the dishes together, doing some chore in the same room, it gives them the opportunity to talk to you when they don't have to look at you because they feel too much like under pressure when they have to look at you.
That's a big because I think a lot of parents don't get that. And I remember when my son was in school, and I was on a parent teachers council. We
Hmm.
brought in a specialist who specialized in communicating with boys. And one of the
Hmm.
things he said in particular with boys was that have you ever noticed that your son will come and talk, because my son went to all boys school, so he was talking to parents just raising boys, that he will come and talk to you as soon as you start to go on the phone or you're talking to someone else. And boys have a different way of communicating that we as parents think they're being rude, and it's not that they're being rude, they're being actually, that's when they feel I don't know what it is in their makeup, but that's what makes them feel comfortable
Hmm.
communicating. So I love that, awareness of talking to, see, we're building series as we're talking here, Roxanne, so we have to have dealing with the teenager and those in puberty, and then dealing with the tweens, and then
Yeah.
dealing with the toddlers, and the mixing of, the teenager who has a younger one, and then when you have the baby and your mental health, and then there's a pandemic.
Oh gosh, it's hard. It's hard. Don't beat yourself up because you feel like you're losing your mind or that you
Yeah,
can't manage. A lot of people are feeling this way. It isn't
yeah.
just you.
Keisha Wynn, stop it. Keisha Wynn, good evening. No, they're being rude. They're not being rude, Keisha. They're not being rude. you know, boys are very different.
Yeah.
And when you think about, because you deal with a lot of young people,
Yes.
and we have some moms here I can see online that are raising sons. Any tips for moms raising sons who are in like puberty and early teenagehood?
Oh gosh. Um, like you said, they have a different communication style. They will talk to you at nighttime when it's bedtime and you're tired. They will talk to you, like you said, when you're on the phone. Um, and they don't talk to you like girls. Did you know that men and women have different uh, words in terms of volume? Men will only speak about 5,000 words a day, and
Yes.
women will speak around 20,000, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to have, you know, they will just come and sit beside you. Um, you know, understand that the boys, they will want to hang out with their friends. They're not going to be like your girls. I have boys myself, but my boys are little. But the older boys, they will. The rooms are going to be well. It might be a cultural thing, but some boys, some boys are untidy. Their rooms are a bit of a mess. You have to tell them you need to put on some deodorant. You know, you need to go
Mhm.
have a shower.
Who you telling? Who you telling?
But that's part of that's just part of how they are.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you want to ensure that they have people, they have social connections. They have people that they will connect with, particularly now, and especially in this pandemic time. Boys will want to spend a lot of time on the video games, right? Do your best to try to balance that. Don't
Mhm.
allow them to stay locked up in their room on the video games forever. Encourage them out to get some fresh air. They need outside time. They need to connect with their peers. I know that it's a pandemic style, it's a pandemic life right now. And in Ontario, we just have our new stay at home order.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you are in a bubble with another family, who have, they have children the same age as your children, see if you can get them to connect, at the park or going for a walk, or it's getting nicer
Creative thing.
outside here,
Yes.
a bike
Yes.
ride with their friend. Yes, they need that connection.
And we have to be creative with our boys in particular, because they will internalize, and
Yes.
they will get quiet. And I think there are games like Kahoot. The website Kahoot. I see the
Hmm.
great games on Kahoot.
Yeah.
I love the puzzle. I saw my sister and her family doing puzzles, and that has brought the family together. Here's Miss Keisha coming up from the rear. This is why men tune us out. LOL. And you know what? I think it's the tune out, but I also believe that, from speaking up to my male friends, it's about their processing speed,
Yeah.
and they process differently. Sometimes we as women will think that they're not hearing us. Now we as women will kind of bring it back to them and say, like, something like, we come and nag them the same day or whatever. They may come back 5 days later and bring up the
Yeah.
topic, and you go like, what just, but we, but yeah, they process at a different speed than we do. Serena is like, I have to remember the talking side by side. Serena,
Yeah.
that is so important. And that's why I think, like, things like the puzzle building, the cooking, if you're going for the walk,
Yes.
if you're able to drive, you're going for a drive. That's when they talk. They will just spiel. Watching a movie, watch them
Hmm.
talking.
Hmm.
You know, get on the phone with a girlfriend and just say, hold on, he's gonna come and talk to me just now. This is just me having you on the phone, or just pick up the phone and pretend you're talking to yourself. I don't know. I'm just thinking of those things right there. But Roxanne, you have gone into a particular profession, being a social worker and a psychotherapist. Like, okay, before we even go there, for some people, they may not even understand what a psychotherapist is, because we have psychotherapists, we have psychiatrists, then we have
Psychologist. Yes.
psychologists. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
what's the difference?
Yeah, I'll break that down. So, psychotherapists and social workers are more or less the same thing. So, um, there are registered psychotherapists, and they do the same thing as social workers, only they are registered with a different regulating body,
Okay.
right? So, you come to us when you need talk therapy, when you need to see a therapist or a counselor to talk about your anger, your depression, relationships, that kind of stuff. Then there is psychologists. Those people have a PhD in psychology. They're doctors, and they do mental assessments. So if you're worried that you might have ADHD but you're not sure, you can go and see a psychologist, and they will do um, a special kind of testing, like a brain, kind of like a brain
Right.
testing where you answer questions and do this and do that. And they will create a report for you, and they will say, this is what you have. I can diagnose you with XYZ. They can also do talk therapy as well. And their fees are more expensive than, for example, mine.
Right.
But although they're doctors, they have PhDs, they're not medical doctors. And so they
Mm.
cannot they can diagnose, but they can't write prescription,
Okay. Okay. I did not.
right? So they can diagnose you with depression, they can diagnose you with a learning disorder, they can diagnose you with ADHD or autism, but they cannot write you a prescription because they're not a medical doctor.
Okay. Okay. Got it now.
A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor. They went to medical school and they went to study how, specifically, how the mind works and the brain chemistry behind it and all of that. They can also diagnose you with anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, those things. And they are also specialists in medicating those mental health issues,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right?
Now I get it, because I never really totally got, and that's the key line,
Yeah.
that doctor piece. So what made you go into this profession?
Um, moving here,
Really?
yeah, moving from actually when I started university I was at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, and I was actually studying biochemistry.
All righty then. Okay.
And then I moved to Canada, and honestly, I had a heck of a time trying to transfer my credits from university in
Yes.
Jamaica to
Yes.
listen, immigration is no joke,
Sets you
right?
up. Sets you up.
And um, then there was the whole rigmarole around trying to find work and trying to get settled. And it was so challenging.
Hmm.
I thought to myself, so many people are going through this. How are they holding it together? How are they managing it? How are they keeping it
Hmm.
all right? And
Yeah.
so I was working at the time, I was working full time. And I was talking to my husband about this, and he said to me, you didn't quite finish school. Is that something that you want to do? And I said, yeah, but I don't want to go back to my I don't. And by then I began to realize how much I enjoy connecting with people.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, I don't want to finish biochemistry and spend all my day in a lab. That's not what I want to do with my life. And so I thought about it for a long time, and I started looking through, university programs and stuff. And I came across social work, and I said, yeah, that is what I want to do, because I began to realize that I have this social justice streak, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always there for the underdog, for the people who can't find housing, for the people who are struggling with their relationships and all those things. So I figured that social work would help me to figure it all out. And while I was only planning to get an undergraduate degree, because it's so funny how my life takes me in steps, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to go to school. I just wanted to get into university because no one in my immediate family had ever gone to university. And then when I
Mhm.
got there, but by the time I came here and I got to university, um, I had the opportunity to go to a school where the faculty there was very diverse. And they encouraged me, and they said to me, in this country, as a Black woman, you cannot stop at your undergrad. We see potential in you, and you need to apply to go to grad school.
Now that's special. That's
And so, so I decided to go to grad school, and then I ended up um, doing this work. I started out in children's mental health, and my supervisor, my manager there, became my mentor. And she's been following me throughout every step of the way, and she's also cheering me on and giving me advice when I need it and stuff. And I always say that you can't go anywhere by yourself. They have
right.
there's that
No, no,
African
no, no,
proverb
no.
that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together.
I love that. I've never heard that one.
No.
I love that one. I love it. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to have
Yeah,
to remember that.
yeah. So yeah, so so that's how I ended up doing this work, and I absolutely love it.
So when you look back on your life, and you think, is there a time in your life where you realize that your mental health and wellness was in trouble?
Um, yeah. So I mentioned before that I have two boys. And I I always knew that I wanted to become a parent. And my husband and I, we waited for a while because I was in school. I went back to school,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to parent while I was in school. So we waited until school was over and all that stuff. And then we decided to start a family. And then I like to say that both my boys are rainbow babies. So I had a miscarriage the first time, and then I had my baby, and then I miscarried the second time, and then I had my baby.
Wow.
And what I did not expect, first of all, I losing a baby was not anywhere on my radar.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then when it happened, I did not. The devastation was unbelievable to me. It was just, uh, it really shook me. But because I was so young and naive, and not even just young and naive, but buying into the things that the world tells you, the
Mhm.
things that society tells you to do, I didn't have anybody to say to me, when you lose a baby, do not get up and go to work the next day.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And so I figured that if I stayed at home, I would just lay in bed and cry.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, let me get dressed, get up, get on the TTC, and go to work. And I went to work and I started my day. And my manager came in the office and she said, basically, she was like, oh, you look so. What happened? And I just fell apart.
Oh
And
my
she called
God.
me to her office and she said, what happened? And I told her, and she said, you need to go home and I don't want to see you here for the rest of the week. And I am so thankful for her. But that was a really, really difficult
Mhm.
time. And then when we finally got past that and found out that we were expecting the baby that's now our first, I was riddled with anxiety.
Anxiety. Yes. Yeah.
I was like, what if I go to this ultrasound and there's no heartbeat? Like there's no way I can go through that again. It was just um it was hard. And then, you know, we had him and all was well. And then a couple years later, we decided to try again. And, I was so enamored with this first child that I thought, there's no way this can
Hey,
happen.
it's gonna happen again. Yeah.
But then it did. And it just felt like the ground was pulled up from under me again. And, a friend of mine who specializes in grief, she actually said this to me just last year or the year before. She said to me, um, your loss is valid,
Mm.
even though you didn't have a baby to hold in your arms.
Yes.
And when she said that to me, it really hit me to the core because, again, society has this thing where, oh, it's just a miscarriage.
Yeah.
It's not really, it just felt like there's this idea that it's not really real.
It's yeah, and it's not really a baby. It's not. It's not.
Right,
Yeah. It's like
right,
it's just a. It's just a. Yeah.
right. But when you have infant loss, you not only lose the pregnancy, but you lose all the hopes and dreams that get, when you pee on that stick and it says that you're pregnant, your mind is already like holding this child. You're already picking out names. You're already shopping for baby clothes. You're
Yeah.
already decorating the nursery. You're doing all these things. You're planning the graduation. Like,
Yeah, yeah. That is so true. And I love how you said infant loss because you've lost you no longer have that child in your womb.
right?
You know as a woman that there was a being, a
Yes,
living
yes,
vessel of
yes,
love in your womb
yeah,
that you were carrying,
yeah,
and that vessel of love is no longer in that place
yeah.
as carrying. So how did you manage the anxiety? I mean, one, it's the first grieving the mourning of one child,
Hmm.
and then you had to go through the anxiety of waiting for the next, and then your second child not being able to make full discovery into the world as we know
Hmm.
this world.
Hmm.
How did you manage your mental health and wellness?
What happened was that I feel like I learned a little bit from the first, and everybody has to manage their own situation in the way that works for them. But
Mhm.
with my very first pregnancy, I did what everybody said, and I didn't tell anyone because you're not supposed to tell anybody until
The
you're
three
past
month
that 3 month mark, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so only I think. My best girlfriend knew, my mom knew, my husband knew. And I felt not only grief stricken, but alone.
Mm.
And so when I was pregnant with the second baby that I lost, I made sure that my whole my community, that they knew, right?
Yes.
So that this time around they knew, and they would call, they checked in, they brought meals, they came over,
Hmm.
and so I had a community around me to offer support.
Embracing you.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
And that was very supportive for you. And so then you actually got pregnant again.
Yes, yes, yeah. And that
So how did you manage the anxiety now through now? This would be your fourth pregnancy.
yes, yes. What happened this time is my doctor said to me, I'm not taking any chances.
Hmm.
You are going for an ultrasound at 6 weeks. You are going for an ultrasound at 10 weeks. And even before I got to the place of referring me to the obstetrician, she said, even before we get there, I want to ensure that, because
Hmm.
she knew that I had the anxiety and the worry.
Hmm.
And she said,
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to ensure that. And I my I have a really good partner, and so he was with me at every appointment. If he had to take the day off or the afternoon off, he was always there, so that was helpful as well.
I thank you for sharing such personal and deep details, because I know it's not easy. And if there's anyone listening live and on the replay, and if anyone has a friend, because sometimes you never know who's listening, who has gone through or is going through something like this, is there any advice that one could share for someone? And let's first start dealing with someone who's actually experiencing it right now, because there's so many stages to grief. There's so many things that we could be grieving for.
Yeah,
And I think when we look at grief overall, there are people who are grieving losing their loved ones in the pandemic,
yeah,
losing a child. You know, tips on dealing with your grief.
yeah. I There's this idea in the therapy world that that grief is a cycle, and that you go through like anger and acceptance and all those things. And personally, I don't believe that that's true.
Yep,
I think that grief is up, down, and all over the place at any time, at any hour of the day.
totally.
Um, I know people who have lost loved ones, and 5 years later on the anniversary, they're a mess, right? Just like that. And when it seems like they've
Yeah,
been managing fine,
yeah.
grief is that unexpected, uninvited guest, and it just comes in and knocks everything over.
Hmm.
So you are not. Um, there's something wrong with you because you're crying at a time when you expected to be better. Grief
Hmm.
is not something that you heal from. Well, I shouldn't say that. Grief is not something that you get over. It is not something that you move on from. It is something that you learn to live with.
Right,
Right? Grief
right.
is like I don't mean to sound morbid, but it's like losing a limb.
Hmm. Oh yes, I get it. I get
You
it.
recognize the absence,
Yes,
you can never replace it,
yes.
but you figure out how to live without it somehow.
That's
You
good.
find a new kind of normal. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with you if you need a moment to cry and live through that grief.
Hmm.
I'm saddened by the fact that people can lose people important to them, and your benefit package at work says you get 4 days. What is that?
What is 4 days?
What are people supposed to do with that? Right? Um, the other thing that my friend who's the Greek therapist, she also says that it is like living in a fishbowl. Everyone else can see. and everyone will tell you how you should be functioning, but you're the only one in that bowl.
Wow.
So you have to figure out the best way to swim in your situation.
That's good, Roxanne. And Serena is identifying with what you're saying. Thank you for your transparency. Grief is that unexpected, invited guest. Wow. And
Hmm.
Serena has known some grief. Grief is something you learn to live with. See, Serena is taking notes for us tonight. Yes, and that bereavement package is ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yes.
I think it's redunculous. Not even ridiculous, it's redunculous because, you know, you're dealing with the funeral, you're dealing with different things, and then you have to go back into work, and
Hmm.
so we definitely need to look at how we deal with individuals who are dealing with loss, and especially now in the pandemic when a lot of people are losing loved ones and they're not there with
Right.
them,
Exactly. You can't.
you
You
know.
can't. You can't say goodbye. There isn't any closure. You can't. You can't even hug people at a funeral. Like
Yeah.
it's so. It's taken away a lot from us. This pandemic.
And I think we have to find ways, when I think about it, I always say we have to find opportunities in the crisis, no matter what the
Hmm.
crisis is. And so if we were to reflect, you know, what could we say to anyone that is dealing with that loss in this pandemic? And it could even be a loss of work.
Yes.
Because loss is loss. That's what people I think forget. Loss is loss.
Yes.
When I think of mental health and wellness as well, I was speaking with a group the other night and we were talking about um, when you have a loved one with a mental illness, you grieve the loss of the person you knew,
Hmm. That's right.
because people, somebody who has cancer, and it's different. It's not a personality change. Most times because most people don't even realize that mental health is a brain disease that
Yes.
affects the mind.
Yes.
That's the piece that most people don't realize, and so there can be a loss of that. Remember we talked about the dreams and the goals that you have, and releasing that, because it's when you talked about you know your own loss with your children, you had to release some of those things
Yes.
because there was no way to expect it.
Yes.
um you see, I'm telling you, we're building a series, Roxanne. Like, pulling all the points, like, you guys are definitely getting a teaser tonight on what minding our minds is going to evolve into, because we have to mind our minds in so many ways, and we have to look at literally each topic and break it down
Mm.
area and break it down, and help people navigate through it. Serena is saying my old job wanted to give me 3 days off when my mom passed away. I
Wow.
told them I will see you all in 3 weeks, and that's if I'm ready to come
Where did
back.
you come back?
What's his 3 days? Brenton, thank you for tuning in. It's difficult to
Oh,
present
hey, Brenton.
what we can't connect with. We have been conditioned through connection, and now connections changed.
Yep.
Thank you, Brenton. You ladies are dropping gems. Thank you, Brenton.
Thanks,
That's good
Brenton.
stuff coming from you. And and so in this, I'm thinking about the pandemic. I'm thinking about the change, and you know, people may not even understand mental health and wellness. And for me, one of the opportunities in the crisis of this pandemic is where the conversation is actually
Mhm.
becoming normalized,
Yes.
and we're able to talk about it in ways we couldn't talk about it before, and especially in the Black communities, Brown communities, the BIPOC communities, where really be able to talk about mental health and wellness in a way that we couldn't talk about it before. People didn't understand anxiety or
Mm-mm.
depression. Sorry, not sorry. I'm glad some of you are getting to understand anxiety and depression now, because there's been so much judgment,
Yes.
because mental health is no respecter of persons. And so as I say that, how would you define a mental illness so people can understand a little bit about what it is?
So, like you said, a mental illness is a brain disease and it affects the mind, it affects how you function, it affects how you show up in the world. Um, but the other thing as well is that I see mental health on a spectrum, right?
Mm,
And Oftentimes when people think about mental health, they just think about mental illness, right? But just like your physical health, you can wake up feeling fine, and then, you might have a cough or you have a cold, but just because you have a cough doesn't mean that you need to go to emerge with pneumonia,
Come on
right?
now.
So just because you are feeling sad doesn't mean that you have a depressive disorder, right? But it is something to pay attention to. Just like if you have a cold, you're going to monitor it, and you're going to know you know, if your cough is turning into something where your chest is feeling tight and now you can't breathe. And so if you find yourself with sadness or worry or fears that you didn't used to have before, you're going to now start to you're going to pay attention to that. And if it is something that is beginning to impact your functioning, your level of functioning, then that is when you start to recognize that I'm going into the realm of illness, right? There
Hmm.
is mental wellness, there is mental, what I call unease, and then there is mental illness, and then there is mental health crisis, right? And it's really, really important to
Hmm.
know where you are in that spectrum, right? Oftentimes, parents will bring their children to me and they will say, well, my child is having this thing. And I will say, okay, how do you know? How is it impacting their behavior? When adults come to me, I will say to them, talk to me about, I give them a scale. I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is this impacting your functioning?
Right.
Well, I feel really sad and I don't feel like talking to anybody, but I can still get up and take care of my family and go to work and do all these things. Um, Really, really pay attention to yourself and your level of functioning. Now, that being said, when people think about things like depression, I'll use depression for an example.
Hmm.
Um, People expect that those with depression can't get out of bed. They can't take care of themselves and they
Say
can't take
that
care of
again,
their family.
Roxanne. Say that again.
People expect that those with depression cannot get out of bed, cannot take care of their families, cannot show up to school or to work, when the truth of the matter is, people with depression, people with mental illness are excellent at showing up to do the thing. They know what is expected of them and they push it to the side because they
Yes.
know that the bills need to get paid. They push it to the
Yes.
side because they know that their children need to get taken care of. However, again, I come back to pay attention to yourself. If you find, if you're overwhelmed by this pandemic and you find yourself crying in the shower maybe once a month or once a week, then, we're living in a pandemic. There's grief
Right.
around that. We've lost our lives as it used to be. If you find that you're crying to yourself to sleep every night,
Every
that's
night.
a problem.
Hmm.
If you find that um, you are so worried about COVID-19 that you cannot walk out your front door, that's a problem. If you find that you are uh, in an amazing, wonderful, outstanding mood for 6, 8 weeks and you're spending a lot of money and you're doing all these elaborate things, and then after that 6 to 8 weeks, you're so depressed you cannot get out of bed, that's a problem.
That's a big problem.
That's a big problem, right? Those are symptoms of bipolar disorder,
Yep.
right? And so it is so important. The other thing too is when your loved ones pull you aside and when they express concern, because sometimes it's hard to see ourselves, but they see you.
Hmm.
They see you and they know you sometimes more than you know yourself, right? And so if they and off, we don't people on a whole don't like conflict. We usually think it's you. People will say to me, I don't like conflict and it's just me. People on a whole don't like conflict. And so
Yes.
for a friend or a cousin or a spouse or a sister to come to you and say, I've noticed a change in you, it means that it's a significant change. because now they're like, all right, I'm going to risk the conflict and I'm going to tell her
Yes.
or tell him what I've
Yes.
noticed. Right. So
Yes.
that is something also to pay attention to. Um, you know, the other thing that I will say about mental health that I've noticed in my line of work is that, and some people don't really understand this when I say it, but I've noticed a little bit of a hierarchy when it comes to mental health.
Talk about it.
People like to people talk about anxiety and depression very easily,
Mm-hmm.
very easily,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like it's very tongue in cheek, but I will make this comparison. It's like talking about having cancer and having
Yes.
AIDS.
Yes.
People will
Yes.
talk about cancer, but they whisper about HIV and AIDS.
Taboo.
Taboo,
Taboo
right?
and stigmas. Yes.
And so, even though there's a stigma around mental health and it's lifting, people will readily talk about anxiety and depression.
Like it's the only thing that exists.
Only thing, but no one will talk about borderline personality disorder. No one wants to talk about schizophrenia. No one wants to talk about bipolar disorder. Those are memes. Those are hashtags. Those are
And
jokes.
let's not even get into concurrent disorders
Oh
because
my goodness, we could be
and
here
then,
all night.
then let's not even touch addictions. I mean,
Yes,
and then add addictions with mental. So when we say concurrent disorders, it's more than one we're talking
right.
about. And unfortunately, I wish the languaging around mental illnesses when they were thinking about it, I understand certain words, but I'm like you weren't thinking because to use the word disorder, who
Right.
wants to say they have a disorder, bipolar
Disorder.
disorder, you know?
Right.
And I change the language. I refuse to say disorder at the end of
Good.
any of them. Doctors fight with
Good.
me. I don't care. You're not a family member. And if you have to tell a family member with bipolar that they have a bipolar disorder, they are
No.
not receiving that at all. And it's
Yeah.
even hard when you have to go and approach someone that you know and you love and say that you have a concern. And Serena has the right question right here. What happens when you tell them out of concern and they lash out at you?
That's something that you're gonna risk,
Yep.
and know that they don't lash out at you because they don't like you. Know that they lash out at you because of the stigma that we've placed on that mental health challenge. And no one wants to believe that they have a mental health issue because of this stigma. A friend of mine actually gave me a real reason to think the other day, and I'm journaling some thoughts about it, and I have to figure out what to do with these thoughts. But uh, there is this in my profession. There is this rule, right, that says if you provide therapy and you run into a client in public, you can't really say hi,
I know. I
right?
heard that. Yeah.
And
Stupid.
I just accepted it as well. Okay, sure, I understand that. No one wants to if they're with people
Yep.
and someone says, "Who is that?" And
Yep.
then a friend of mine recently said, "But that's ridiculous." And when I hung up from her, I thought to myself, you know what? She's right. It's perpetuating that stigma. Why
Totally.
why can't the person next to me know that I'm going to therapy? What's wrong with that?
And but here's even the thing. Even if you don't have to say it's a therapist, say it's a friend.
Right.
Because basically, what you have done is you walk by that person on the street, you invoke the shame. I have seen
Exactly.
so many times with families and with doctors that
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, even with doctors, passing by family members like myself, and they talking to me in the hospital about my loved one, but we walk out, and as soon as we hit that, I'm like, what the heck?
Strangers.
What
Yeah.
what had happened was you see them in the subway, and I couldn't understand it. And now I didn't understand it was that.
Hmm.
And now it makes sense. So this is another conversation, right, Rob? I tell you, we're gonna break some myths because to me it's part of normal. We have to
Oh,
find
yes.
ways to normalize the
Yes.
conversation around mental health and wellness and illness. And this is why, this is one of the reasons why I created this Minding Our Mind. I didn't even say minds,
Mhm.
mind, because it's we have to take responsibility for our own mind, our own
Yes.
mindset, and we have to have discussions about how the brain works, how your mindset works, and sometimes you can't think things away. Sometimes your brain is misfiring,
Yes.
not misfiring, you know, understanding. Then I love the doctors who are um, who study neuroplasticity,
Yes.
these they're my heroes and sheroes, who have finally. And I mean, and then I know some of the medical world still hits against them, who start talking about the brain and mental
Mhm.
health and wellness, and the narratives around it. But it's so important. I really believe, and I don't know what you think, but I really believe that when people understand it's your brain function is affecting your mind,
Yes.
it will start to normalize the conversation.
Totally. Totally. It also takes away the it changes the conversation because it takes away the idea that you are somehow at fault,
That's it. That's
right?
it. Yes.
You
Yes.
are not at fault,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right? It's like, when I was a little girl, parents who didn't know better, if their child couldn't understand the work at school, they would get spanked,
Mm-hmm.
right? When the truth of the matter is that the child may have had a learning disorder, right? And the parent didn't know that. The parent probably thought that the child was at school goofing off. But if you know that this is something that is outside of your control, if we know that this is something outside of our control, then
Yeah.
we have a lot more empathy. We change our expectation and we see the person as an actual person.
See this. I tell you. I hope you're available for many Wednesdays to come. I hope you're going to be available for many Wednesdays to come, because Roxanne, we're going deep, and when I think about children, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves as parents is, when is it a tantrum, and when is it are they when is it something we need to be aware of?
Mhm.
I think as parents, and my son is now 26, so that's it's a different. He's older now, but I think younger, and even we have to do this for ourselves, because you alluded to it earlier. You have to know yourself and
Mhm.
recognize when you're changing. I didn't recognize when I had gone into depression.
Mhm.
I didn't realize I was functioning, not functioning, and it took me a hot minute to figure that out
Mhm.
and to make the change, and even still recognize that, oh, you know what, and having those people around you that you can be honest with and say, you know what, or they will call you out and say what's going on, and you
Mhm.
can be honest with. We have to have those people in our lives, because before you get so engrossed and become ill, because
Yeah.
what people don't realize is that you can be, just as you said, when you talk about your physical health, your weight gain, your whatever else, you're getting a cold, you're dealing with the symptoms and the signs, but you're not taking care of it. If you don't take care of a cold and you start doing some things that are ill advised, you can end up with pneumonia.
That's right.
You're in a pandemic, you're not wearing a mask, you're going around people, you might be asymptomatic. Guess what? You might end up with COVID-19,
Mhm.
right? So the same thing with our mental health and wellness. You recognize that you're not functioning, you're crying, you're depressed, you can't, you're not reading, you're not doing the things that you used to love. Your joy
Right.
is gone, your happiness is gone. You're snapping at people, you're quick
Mhm.
to anger. We have to be conscious in ourselves, but especially for our children, we need to stop dismissing, especially, and I know I think it's a cultural thing too, whereas um, in black families in particular, and I think not just in black families in particular, I think in a lot of BIPOC, I would use the word BIPOC. I normally don't use BIPOC, but in a lot of the BIPOC communities, we hold our children and ourselves to such a higher level.
Mhm.
So when we don't function at that level, we say, buck up, or
Mm.
when I grew up, and all these different things. And so I really want us to probably have another conversation about, because you really specialize in children as well, and like family counseling,
Mhm.
and looking at our children and the signs to look for, and sibling rivalry, how to deal with this, especially now, navigating this space in this new world. And you also spoke about a lot of families are not making it through the pandemic. There's a lot of separation, there's a lot of
Mhm.
divorce happening. There's domestic violence is on the rise.
Yes.
And so how do we create those safe places for ourselves? How do we put those boundaries in place that you spoke about so eloquently? I mean, when you spoke about boundaries, I'm like, yeah, we're going to just have a boundaries class. Boundaries and walls, the boundaries with work, the boundaries with home, the boundaries with life. And I really love that. Oh, Serena is back on. Serena's like, yes, neuroplasticity and yes, the
The
neuroplasticity. Yes,
brain can change.
changes.
Yes.
Yes. And why are some health professionals against it? Because that's what they learned. That's what they learned. That's what they believe. And you really have to study to show yourself approved.
Hmm.
Um, what have you encountered just before? I know we're going to be tight on time a little bit. In terms of when we talk about the brain and cognitive behavioral therapy and those kind of things,
Hmm.
what would you want to speak to on that point that we can say a little bit about?
So
'Cause-
I think that just around the piece, a small piece around the neuroplasticity is that yes, the brain can change.
Mhm,
We need to
mhm,
expose ourselves to different ways of thinking,
mhm.
different experiences, and practice those things and give the brain the opportunity to
Yes,
express that plasticity and for new creation uh, neural pathways to
to
be
create.
made,
Yes,
right? Um, so yes, I believe that the brain can change, and if we expose ourselves to these new new ways of thinking, different behaviors, things that you may not have been used to, it gives you the opportunity to to be better, right? Around cognitive behavioral therapy, it is very it's often the go-to for many therapists.
mhm,
Um, it's CBT for short. If you
yes,
ever have, it's the go-to for anxiety and depression. That's for
yes,
sure. It's evidence-based. There's a lot of research around the efficacy of CBT.
yes,
Basically, the idea is that our thoughts or cognition impacts how we feel, and those things impact how we behave or the things that we do, right? And so, an example of that would be, for example, uh, you know, you might walk past a group of people and they start laughing as you walk by, and you think that the thought that you have or the cognition, the thought
mhm,
is, um, you know, they're all talking about me and laughing at me because I'm such a loser, right?
mm,
And that causes you to feel really anxious and really ashamed of yourself. And the behavior that comes with that is now you decide not to leave your home for the rest of the week or not to connect with other
mhm,
people because you
mhm,
think you're a loser and they're all going to
mhm.
laugh at you, right? And that you can spiral into anxiety or depression depending on the scenario. Um, CBT says that the best way out of that is to change the way you think or change the things that you do, because the feeling that comes as a result of that is really just a symptom, and you can't really change the feeling just
Right.
by thinking to change the feeling, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
um, I tell my clients that my teen clients that the best way to get punched in the throat is to tell a depressed person to cheer up, because if they could cheer up they would not be depressed.
Come on now. Who wants to stay depressed? Who wants to be in that place? Nobody.
Right. And so when I work with my clients, when we do CBT, I challenge their thought process. So they'll say, well, they're laughing at me because they think I'm a loser. Well, how do you know they're laughing at you? Two, what makes you think that they believe that you're a loser? Where's the evidence that would suggest
Yes.
that this is who you are? And then, we talk about some of the behavioral changes that they can implement in their lives, and that in turn can pull them out of the depression. It can pull them out of the anxiety. But it does take practice. I'm not here to say that you can CBT can I do not believe that CBT can fix everything.
Right.
It's a go-to for many mental health issues, but you can't use it to fix everything. It's not a go-to. um, I would think for something like grief.
Right.
because there's some things around that you can't change, right?
Hmm.
But I definitely believe that there is something to be said for the behaviors that we engage in. So, for example, when we feel sad or worried, we tend to uh, become reclusive. We go in our house, we draw the blinds. We go in our rooms, we shut the door, we turn off the lights, we
Yeah.
get under the covers, and we hide from the
Yeah.
world, right? And when you're in a significantly depressed state, it's hard to change things overnight. But I encourage and challenge people a little bit to make small changes, right? So maybe instead of being in bed all day, maybe you walk around in your home in your pajamas. It's okay. I'm
Yes.
not asking you to wear a three-piece suit and go get an interview. But and then after we do that, maybe we can think about having a reasonable breakfast. If you're not eating, maybe try some toast and a cup of tea,
Yeah.
right? I'm not asking you to make just a little bit at a time,
Yes.
right? Changing the behaviors. And as you start to change the behaviors, you will find that it changes how you feel.
One it's like the 1% rule.
Yes,
Just do one thing. If you can do one thing today, keep doing it, then
yes,
add another thing, and then
hey,
when you add it all up, you realize how much you change, and then it starts shifting
yes,
how you are. And I really like this part, and I look forward to speaking more about CBT because I know the studies have shown a lot. I know the doctors in Europe have used it a lot in England.
yes,
Actually gotten people off of medication doing
yes,
CBT.
yes,
So it's really and cognitive behavioral therapy. If we do it the way, especially for the Black community, is going to be necessary. Some ways that have to be different than
yes,
the Eurocentric,
yes,
type of
totally.
training and stuff like that. And so, Roxanne, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, and I want people to know a little more about what you do. If you want to share how people can find you, I've put it up here. But we can recap a little bit of what you offer at your clinic,
Yes.
that people can come and if they want to get a hold of you, let's do that before we end the show tonight because it's been a robust, full conversation.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, so I offer individual therapy to children, youth, young adults, couples, and I also offer for the people out there who might catch this tonight or later on the replay, who are therapists. A part of being a therapist is that you have to access clinical supervision to help keep you accountable and to offer you support along the way. And so I am registered in clinical supervision. And so I offer clinical supervision to a number of therapists that come to me. And I also do corporate consultation. So organizations are coming to me around offering their staff support, mental health support. So I've been doing trainings and workshops for different organizations. So if you are a leader in your place of work and your company is looking to support their staff in a way that is emotional, or I'm also doing trainings around anti-Black racism in the workplace. So if that is something that you're looking for as well, I can certainly offer that. I offer parenting groups. I talk to schools around helping their students. I support teachers in this pandemic as they're trying to keep their mental health together. So I offer a range of supports and services in the field of mental health and mental wellness. So certainly you can find me on Instagram at Francis Psychotherapy. You can find me on my website at francispsychotherapy.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Awesome, Francis, you have been a soldier tonight. Thank you so much. Everybody's loving it. Serena said, Roxanne, I just called you Francis by your
That's
last
okay.
name. Roxanne, I learned so much from you tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Michelle
Serena.
Hodge, great show, everything. And even though I couldn't watch the entire show, Michelle, you need to connect with Francis.
That's okay. You can catch the replay.
Oh no, she needs to connect with you. She knows what I'm telling her.
Okay.
We're gonna connect the two of you. And Michelle is going to be starting her foundation for in the name of her son. And so she's definitely a person that I know that needs to connect with you. She's following you already. Yes, you are.
Awesome. Thank you.
Shoot her any questions. She's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh boy. I love that.
Yes,
Thank
you are. And Roxanne, thank you for coming on tonight to the show, to the Victory Speak show. We really appreciate you, your realm of knowledge, and how you loved everyone, and for your transparency with your own story of the loss that you have experienced in your life, and dealing with your own grief, and finding the victory in the moments, and
Yes.
the opportunities in the crisis, and just listening to your story of how you've transitioned to becoming a psychotherapist. And I like the question about your why. What is your why? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that really stuck out for me tonight, and I hope it stuck out for everyone else. And as we wind down the show tonight, I just want everybody to just take a moment, go back if you just came in, watch the replay. There's so much to glean from the show tonight. We are going to continue the Minding Our Mind series, because it's so important that we take care of our mental health and wellness. And as we get ready to leave this space tonight, I want to offer you some additional tools. I encourage you to stay in a victory mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and so that you will be victorious in your wellness. Create this wellness revolution for yourself. Create a vision for your own personal wellness. Be ferocious about it. Be intentional about it. Walk in it. You know, Recognize your current habits and your lifestyle. And Roxanne also mentioned that night. Be mindful of who you are and what you're doing. Figure out the habits that you need to change and to break, even in the midst of this pandemic and the way that we are dealing with another lockdown here in Toronto. Depending on what part of the world you are in, you're going through different stages. And so create some new habits to engage, to connect with people. Some people say that they're zoomed out. I say get zoomed in. Make it fun, make it creative. Have like a cook off, do some fun things, share some recipes, share some pictures, interview, just like I'm interviewing people. Interview your family members, get your loved ones together and cultivate yourself. Cultivate the space that you grow in. Get creative. Bring an awareness to yourself. How can I grow in this season? Recognize this is a great place where you can be transformative. Be tactical in this season. Be strategic. Work on a plan. And know that you also have to cheer yourself on in the midst of this, in the midst of minding your mind and your mindset. You need to cheer yourself, get some orchestration, get an orchestra. That could be your friends, that can be your loved ones. And sometimes it just has to be yourself. You need to just clap for your own self. And then you will be restored, because we need to be robust in this time frame. And we can't always do it by ourselves. And in order to do this, beloved, you have to yield to the process. You have to give yourself some self compassion and move in a way of humility. And guess what? Then you've had the victory. Yes, that's the victory formula right there. A little taste of it. We are in a revolution of minding our mind. I am Nicole Waldron, your mental fitness coach and the voice of victory, and the host of the Victory Speak show, where we are determined to have some inspiring conversations with many people over, who knows, this year, next year, for as long as you will allow me to share this platform with you. You can also follow me on our YouTube channel, Victory Speak 7, on the Facebook page. If you're watching on YouTube, the Facebook page is Victory Speak 77. And tune into the audio podcast on Spotify and Apple, and where you will learn more about the victory formula and living a victorious lifestyle. Now, there's also some great conversations happening in Clubhouse. For those of you who have an iPhone or are in Clubhouse, it's Victory Speaks. And remember, people, love is in the details. Let your victories speak every day. Seek to have an inspired conversation with someone you love, someone you meet today, and it may just even be a smile. Your conversations can be inspired by your truth, your love, your story, but just make sure it's meaningful. May you see the victory moments in this day and in your week ahead. Thank you for tuning in. And next week, I have another fabulous guest on Monday for you. It's going to be June Doyle, the author and the inspirational speaker. She is amazing. If you don't have her book yet, you need to find her book, Grown Up Conversations. So see you next week, 8 p.m., live and on the replay, go check out all the other shows that we have done over the last year. Thank you for tuning in. Be blessed. Have a good night.